Well, folks, welcome back for session 2 of Introduction to Project Management Principles and Practices from the University of California, Irvine. We're going to talk about planning. In the first session, we talked about there are 5 process groups. Planning is the second process group we're going to discuss. We figured out what the project is. Done looks like this. Now we have to put a plan together to figure out, well, how do we make that happen? We're going to talk about some of the key tools and concepts in this. One of them, we're going to talk about risks. We're going to have to look at risks to figure out what could go wrong with the project, because sometimes the risks in the project will actually determine some of the tasks we have to put into the project. There are just going to be some risks. You're not going to get away from them. Risks. Every project's going to have them. The idea is to know about the bad ones up front. There's some of them that if one of these risks hits the project, they're so small that it just doesn't make any difference. But some of them, they're bad. And if these things happen, you need to be ready for them. Let's say you're going to drill for some oil down in the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. And you take a look at that and say, well, we got that pipe that's going to be down there pumping oil out. We'll have some kind of a hose that comes up to a platform that sits up on top of the water. Gee, could anything go wrong with that? We want to look at that and say, yeah, there's some things that could happen, and we better be ready for those risks if they actually do happen to the project. What are the worst ones? And let's be ready for those. There are a number of different ways to analyze risks. Just find one that you like and use it. Use at least one of these things. What is a risk? A risk is one of those uncertain things that may happen. If you know that in 3 months down the road in your project, there's some new law or some new regulation that's going to come into place. It's going to be enacted maybe January 1st or July 1st, and at that point, your project just has to deal with that. That's not a risk. That's going to happen. It's there. You have to plan for it. It's just a barrier to your project. It's just part of the project from the very beginning. You have to take care of it. Risks are the things that may or may not happen. These are things that might just jump up and surprise us once in a while. Surprise, happened, or maybe it didn't happen. So things that may or may not happen. Also, the Project Management Institute, PMI, talks about positive and negative risks. We're going to focus on negative risks. Positive risks, those are the things that we try and figure out, yeah, that was great. How do we get that to happen again? We try and just enhance those, make those available somehow to happen again. We want to try and find out how to do that. It's just kind of like blind luck. Take it and run. Be happy with it. Negative risks, those are the ones we're going to talk about working with here. There are 4 steps in this. A lot of times people talk about risk analysis or they talk about risk management. It's all part of the same thing. We have to do something with risks. We have to find the risks. So any way you can find them is fair. Ways to find them, you have the right people sitting around that project table with you on your project team. Those people have a whole lot of expertise about this project, so they should be able to help you really analyze, list what some of the risks are going to be all about. Also, we can look at industry information. We can look at other organizations. We can look at other projects in our organization that have been similar to this. Just find the risks wherever you can and list those. Then after you figure out the list of risks, analyze them. Some of them we'll find, these are bad enough we need to worry about them, and others, we don't need to worry about these. They're not such a big deal. The ones that are bad that we need to really worry about, we need to develop some kind of a risk plan for that so that if the bad thing happens, we're ready to step in and take care of it immediately. And when the bad thing happens, do that. Step in and take care of it. So mitigation is one of the ways to deal with these risks. Mitigation is one way to do it. Transfer the risk to somebody else through a contract. Avoid the risk by just doing something different in the project is another way to do this. Mitigate the risk is a way to do this. We're going to talk about 2 elements when we analyze this risk. One will be impact. How bad is it if it happens? How much will it actually affect the project? Then we're going to talk about probability. Is there any likelihood that this could actually occur on the project? What's going to happen, and will this cause failure on the project? When we look at impact, how bad is it if it happens on the project? Let's say we have an agricultural development project we're working with here. So we've planted a little garden plot. We've rented our little garden plot from the city for $10 a year. There's a bunch of other garden plots around here too. Huge agricultural area here. Everybody's got their little gardens here. It's just about time to harvest all of this food that we've planted. Everything's getting ready at the same time. We've all decided, hey, we're going to go down Saturday morning. We're all going to have this big harvest day and go down and get everything out of these gardens that we have down there. Well, the night before we're ready to go do that, all of a sudden, boom, 2 elephants come out of nowhere and just stomp all over our little garden plot here. Roll all over the place, wreck everything. Well, if you're in the city, that's not going to happen in very many parts of the world. Is it bad if it happens? Sure. But is it likely to occur? Probably not. We want to look at probability. Looking at this in the city, probably not going to happen. Looking at this in some village in northern India, out in the forest, well, maybe we could have some elephants that come out of there. It actually did happen to a little village in that area about 3.5 years ago. A couple of rogue elephants came out of the forest and stomped all over a grain crop that this village had planted that was going to account for about 40% of the food supply for this village for the next year. So is it bad if this gets all stomped to pieces? Yes. Is it likely that it could happen? Is there any chance it could happen? What's the probability? Yeah, there's a chance this could happen. It actually did. Now, there's another element to look at, triggers. Can we tell when something's going to happen? Can we see it coming at the project? The triggers are the things that tell us if something's coming toward the project or has it actually hit the project and it's already affecting the project. We know when the elephants are in there. We'd like to be able to predict it ahead of time. This trigger piece is a way that helps us figure out how we're going to put a risk management plan into our project. A couple of different ways to do things. If we can predict ahead of time, these triggers are here and let us see things well ahead of time. So if we can figure out some way to predict the elephants coming through, like put some strings with some bells on them out in the forest or something, and we hear these bells ringing as the elephants come breaking through there, some way to predict ahead of time. Then what we can do is have a way to deal with this, which might be everybody in the village has some sort of a task now. Different noisemakers that people have, so we go out and bang on things, make all kinds of noise. Different people have torches that they're going to light and wave around, something to wave these elephants off and get them moving somewhere away from our crop here. If there's no way to really predict when the elephants are going to come charging out of the forest and run over toward our crops here, we might just have to build an elephant-proof fence around this thing. So those are just-in-case kinds of risk management. We build the elephant-proof fence if the elephants never even show up. It's in the project, it's part of the project, it's some of the tasks, it's materials we have to do, it's in the scope of the project. It's just done if the elephants show up or not. The other one, we only implement the risk plan, run out and make all the noise, chase the elephants away, if we can predict ahead of time. So these triggers are a good way to help us figure out how we're going to implement our risk management plans and what kind of risk management plan will be effective. Make decisions based on risk priorities, determine which risks are going to be the ones that we have to deal with, determine which ones we need countermeasures for, which to take care of along the way, and we're going to plan our actions based on our risk management analysis that we put together. I'm going to show you a form here that comes from an organization. This is one that they have, and theirs is a lot prettier than this. I just wanted to get the major fields on here so we could discuss these. They have the risk listed, then they have an impact, the probability, and they're going to rate these things 1 through 5. So 1, it's negligible. And 5, it's a big deal. Critical failure to the project, or yes, it will definitely occur along the way here. The highest rating we can have for these risks is 25. We say that's a bad risk, and we want to lower those things down. Every organization needs to figure out how risk averse they are and what that number needs to be brought down to so that we say, okay, this is an acceptable risk. After we figure out now what we're going to do about this risk, then what's our new impact number, our new probability number, and our new total? Have we come up with something that will lower this risk down enough so it's acceptable to the organization and we can move ahead with the project? We also need then to list our triggers. Now, the way that this works, impact and probability are multiplied together. So to get our total number, it's the number 1 through 5 under impact, the one number 1 through 5 under probability. We multiply those and come up with a number. You'll notice that triggers are not on here. Triggers are going to be a list that will accompany this chart, and the triggers will be that whole list of things that tell us when the risk is coming toward the project or when the risk has already hit the project and is already affecting it. So we'll have two pieces that go together here, this chart and the list of triggers. Project tasks. It all comes down to individual project tasks. Project plan is a way to lay out the tasks for our project. We're going to figure out times. We're going to figure out resources that go along with these tasks as well.